So, hi everyone in the room. Nice to have you here. And hello, online audience. Our guest today is Ahmet Öğüt, and he's going to present his artistic practice today. Yeah, business as usual. There's a Q&A afterwards with a 10-minute break, and you'll find the link for the Q&A in the description.
Yeah, hi Ahmet, nice that you're here. Where you were in Berlin, right? Yeah.
I'm in Berlin, yes.
Okay. Next time maybe.
Next time hopefully in person, yes. You're not that far.
Okay, great. So with everything being said, we start your presentation now, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, thank you guys for inviting. I feel blind at the moment. I don't know how many of you out there in the room and online, but I know you guys are there. So I'll just start my usual presentation about my work and practice in general. It has been a while that I've been doing this. So I will give you some of the keywords, examples, and maybe a little bit back and forth, not necessarily chronological way, introduction of my practice. And yeah, questions I guess we save for the end, which I wouldn't mind normally if I was there personally to get the questions in the middle as well. But not to complicate things, I will just go on with the presentation and then we can get them at the end as well. And we will see if there's any moving images I could show. If it doesn't work, I will skip that work and go to the next one. The reason I start with this particular image, it's a performance from 2013. It was an artist talk. But the setup was very different than this one now. Every time something slightly different, in artist talks. So I've been doing artist talks since a very long time, and I also teach about it, how the setup can be done slightly different, no matter it's online, offline, or whatever condition it is. So in this specific example, it was 2013, it was the year. Actually, it was same week of Istanbul Biennial was supposed to happen, and it did happen, but Biennial had to cancel all the projects in public space. They took that decision with an announcement, but we knew that it was a time, and the uprising happened just 3 months before the Biennial, and it was very difficult to do anything in public space. And here we see a group of people in a terrace, and the photo is taken from the opposite, which is me taking that photo. What is happening there is this is the highest historical tower in Istanbul, and it's a very touristic spot, and you have a really good city view when you go up there. And I lived there many years, but I never went up there. That's a typical story. You always postpone these touristic locations. So in this case, what I did was inviting everyone to this terrace opposite to this tower and looking for me, and they couldn't find me. Instead, they found this lip reader guy, his name is Özgür. He was the only official lip reader in Turkey. He kind of invented the job and also started his own institution. And everyone was basically going to Özgür when they needed a lip reader. So a lot of court cases, they went to him. And he even worked with snipers to lip read people from distance, like police and all the other people. And also he started the disabled people institution and so on. This guy was an interesting guy. When I approached him asking that, can he lip read my artist talk if I go to the tower opposite to this terrace, and when people arrive, and he can try to lip read with a binocular, and maybe tell the story of my artist talk, whatever I'm talking about. I picked 5 works back then to talk about, and they were all works that were either attacked, stolen, or censored in public space. And it was a funny encounter. So everyone went there, they were looking for me, they didn't find me. And some of them discovered that, oh, I'm actually there, like this little person opposite, standing on the tower, without a microphone, without any tool. so they can't really hear me. I was just speaking, and Özgür was there standing with his binocular trying to listen me. So of course it was not like there was a lot of things lost in translation. We use also two languages for this artist role, and whatever Özgür can catch from my lip moves. And this is something for me, like, you know, even talking about works right now is also very complicated because I feel absolutely blind. You know, you can't get a sense of the room and the scale and the space and number of people. It's really also about the dialogue. And many of my works about that as well, either happening in public space or in institutional space. It always either involve the audience or the perspective of audience. I also look at my own work from outside. I want to start this very early piece. Like, it's a good starting point because it's a good reference also for myself to remember. And not to forget that approach. You know, this was the time I was, I went to a car park and transformed two strangers' cars, one into a taxi, Istanbul taxi using cardboard, and the other one into a police car, again using cardboard. So this was like pretty much the beginning of like the type of work I was doing. Public intervention, no budget required, no invitation required, you know. Basically, you could just go use public space as your own space to work and create the work. Here you can see the images as well. So I try to keep alive this part of my practice over many years. You know, even though later it became very like a common practice for me to do site-specific works, long-term project, research-based projects, commissioned projects, site-specific commissioning project. You know, the budget got bigger and traveling involved and so on. I always try to keep this part alive. So trying to keep this part alive, you know, no budget needed, no invitation needed, just go out there and do the work, was also useful during COVID times, actually, for me. Like, that didn't, I was able to transform some of the commission works into some things that I could do from even home, from where I am. And that was basically like my practice wasn't like slowing down even during those times. Going back to like very late piece, which I think have somehow like have similar spirit, because it was done under similar conditions when last month I was doing a show in the Museum of Contemporary Art in Skopje in North Macedonia. Basically, North Macedonia has become North Macedonia like since 1 year. It's brand new country, still have a lot of conflict with all the neighboring countries, you know, Greece, Bulgaria, and so on, for various reasons. And they try to survive on the basis of Yugoslav heritage, and they have this giant museum, quite impressive museum. It was built right after the earthquake during Yugoslav times, and it was the times of solidarity. So basically they have this huge museum, but without proper infrastructural support and budget, you know, to maintain and sustain a museum like that. You know, you always dream of having such a large museum, really impressive on top of a hill, and, you know, in your own town, especially if you're studying art. In those parts of the world, one museum means a lot to have. But then, you know, the country disappears, Yugoslavia disappeared, and now the museum is running a program which really like a make and do style, with a lot of solidarity as well. So back then, during the earthquake, they got a lot of artworks donated by international artists. And they have actually quite impressive collection without spending much money, because of that solidarity action back then. And even now, a lot of artists supporting this museum. And it was a pleasure to work with the museum. It's a small budget, you know, which still every now and then happens. And it was for me important to come up with an idea that is for me, like the first one I showed you, you know, that makes sense and that doesn't require such big budget to produce. So all we needed was this little trampolines, and we hang the artworks from the collection I picked, David Hockney, Anna Eva Bergman's, and Victor Vassileri's artworks above eye level, and people had to jump to see these works, in eye level. Instead of adjusting to the humans, we had to adjust to see these artworks. It's a little. So I like the spirit of that. This still can come back, and in those kind of moments, that an artwork can be created under conditions that are not always perfect. Now going back to an image that was one of the first, earlier commissioned piece. This was for the Berlin Biennial at Kunstwerke. I was invited to take over the main room during the biennial, and all I did was asking them to cover the floor with asphalt. It looks very simple, conceptual, and minimal piece, but it was very complex procedure to produce a work like that, especially in Germany. And the meaning also was changing, because I first did this piece in Istanbul, and there it was very political, because in developed countries, even my generation remembers the time when asphalt arrives to the country for the first time, to the cities, and to really defining the territory, almost like state defining the territory, while bringing the services, but also claiming authority over the territory. And it was different meaning in Germany. Also, the production-wise, like in Turkey, it was we could do it in a couple of hours, and we got support. It was easy to do it. It didn't cost that much. On the other hand, in Germany, it took weeks to plan, and also it was really costly piece and artwork. And then at the end, also it costs even more to remove the piece. So it was showing the way things done, a simple work like that, simple gesture-based work like this. Of course, it has its own metaphorical meanings on also physical experience of smelling and sticky asphalt in interior in a white cube gallery space, but also means of production. Again, going back to that, I always give information about like the conditions how the works are done. It's also very important, how this internal process of negotiation and making things done in different countries and under different scale institutions and budgets and facilities that are there or not there. This one. This is another early piece when I did for Venice Biennial, representing Turkey back then, and I just did a collection of this another display of the same work afterwards. So it's this collection of attack buildings. They were, venues of traumatic incidents, but they look very anonymous. So when you put together these buildings that are basically from 1991 till 2008 at the time, the research was the work was exhibited 2009. So the latest incidents, the last 20 years back then, 20, 30 years, it was coming from certain areas, former Yugoslavia, and also globally as well, like North America to Latin America and Middle East as well, like specific places like Future TV building from Beirut or Oklahoma Federal building from US from 1995 attacks, or Otesia, the school building, and many different buildings from like Banja Luka's in Bosnia to many like Sarajevo Public Library to many places, Water Tower from Vukovar or Europe or Hotel from Belfast. They were locally famous buildings, but internationally they were not known on purpose. Purposefully, I picked buildings and locations that are personally and locally known instead of like very, very much used by the media. And all these buildings, they were also became mediatic after they were attacked. So you could only see them as ruins. It is very hard to see the picture images of them. If it's an ordinary post office from Pristina, it's very hard to see earlier pictures before the attack, after they get at least, for a moment, well known. It was called Exposed City. From that work, I'm going to this piece became one of the pieces that have been traveling, and right now, actually, within I think 2 weeks, I will be doing the first edition, US edition of it in Oberlin, in Ohio, with the collection of Memorial Museum there. And the story comes from, it's originally, it's not my idea. It's from 1849. Mikhail Bakunin proposed this idea to his friends when they were making barricades in Dresden. And he asked his friends if they can borrow the artwork from National Museum. And if they put this original artworks in front of the barricades, maybe the army, approaching army, will not dare to destroy these original artworks. Therefore, the barricades. So I had this conceptual idea, very contemporary idea, in 1849, which was refused by his friends. So this never really happened, and there was these rumors about the story of that was around. I heard about it first time in an academic paper. Somebody was referring it, and then I thought, okay, well, when I was doing the show in 2015 in Eindhoven in Van Abbe Museum, it was kind of like mid-career retrospective back then. I had around 40 works in that show, and still feeling that I should add a work that's dealing with the collection, because that's a museum creatively rethinks its collection. So I have a set of works that rethinks the collection, basically working with other artists' works that are already in the collections of the museum. And I develop concepts and ideas and installations around reusing and repurposing them, and coming up with alternative displays. So in this one, I took the idea of Bakunin and proposed the museum that why don't we create a barricade inside the museum with original artworks like Picasso, Liszewski, Marlene Dumas, and so on, and also create a contract if there is an uprising in that country. Let's say this was in Netherlands. And if this work eventually sold to the museum, they have to agree to loan the artwork back to the streets. And they have to agree to negotiate also giving the original paintings to the streets. And first it was not seen as realistic piece, although many museums, different institutions wanted to show this piece over and over again. But to have it as part of the collection was seen by most people as a kind of fantasy. How a museum can take the responsibility of an artwork that might possibly and potentially return to streets under radical conditions. And 2015 in Netherlands, it looked like everything very stable, and in Europe as well. Okay, now if you think of I was giving examples of what happened in Egypt, what happened to the museums in Egypt during the uprising, which was recent back then, and many other radical examples. Also in Europe during the First World War and Second World War, how they tried to protect all these original artworks and hiding them in caves and hidden places in order them not to be destroyed. And now the most recent example is actually in Ukraine. What happened, how the heritage was, people were trying to protect it, even building walls around monuments and so on, try to keep the heritage, protected. So this work was actually not only about the future, but all these past examples or current examples. And it was just a call for an institution to really think itself. These are different versions, by the way. The previous one was in Istanbul. This is in Cologne, actually not so far from Düsseldorf, in 2016. I did one version also at Museum Ludwig. So for those institutions, it's really how to imagine the museum under radical conditions, and also during crisis, that are not fantasies, that are actually very realistic. And we have a lot of examples from the recent history. Still, for this work to become a real work, eventually I did one version also in Dresden in 2018, and in 2020, finally I did the version in Stella Museum in Amsterdam. So it was back to the Netherlands, and this museum actually decided to buy the piece and put it in the collection. And so they did something, maybe a museum in actually Germany told me, oh, that's Netherlands, they can do something like that. This is really difficult for a German museum to do, to sign such a contract, conceptual contract, to actually agree that if there is an uprising, and that uprising fits the criteria, violating human rights and so on, museum will have to agree to give to this piece, and they sign this document. And if they don't give it, they have to make every time public statement why they don't, and then that will make them complicit if it is, they can't explain when really a social political movement policy saying that to defend human rights, basically remaining passive or not taking a position for responsibility. Okay, do you hear me? Okay, so what I was saying, that it's really, where I was, basically the museum agreed with all these conditions that is very unusual, that comes with the work. So contract is not only a small part of this piece, but also a very important part. And so far it was just a proposal, but after signing such a contract, it's make the work real. And we have this example now. So it was interesting to see that. Now we will see how it goes in States, in the next museum. So finishing that and jumping to the, I can answer questions if it's still complicated for you, the previous work. Later, this is a work I did first. This is the second edition. The first, it was first edition was in Dubai, and they asked me to do an educational project during the art fair, which I found quite, is it really necessary? Is it really possible at all to do an educational project in an art fair environment within only 3 days? And I thought, okay, let's look at the infrastructure of the art fair. So what I did, I asked them, I also noticed that they have a couple of VIP lounges, not only one, but each VIP lounge has like different hierarchies already in the art fair setup. And I asked them if they have interns. They said yes, they have quite a big number of interns, and they don't have a place to hang out, and they don't get paid also. So they just run around, and they don't have a place to rest and take a break and gather. I thought, okay, let's make another VIP lounge called intern VIP lounge, and only people are allowed to enter this VIP lounge are the interns. So they got their sleek cards, and they could enter this place. And other collectors and other guests, important guests of the art fair, they cannot enter this place. So we had like really a fun place, but also a place that we had a program of a number of talks by famous curators and artists coming visiting this inter VIP lounge and talking to the interns. And but there was also like chocolate fountain to massage service to drinks and snacks to everything in this place. So it was highly popular place, and also making people curious who were not able to enter this place, especially collectors and other people. Here also from the show I just did, again a little bit back to the old spirit, very simple work. I did for the show in Skopje just last month. It's called Appointed Curators. So it was very simple work. I Googled the 2 words, appointed curator, and these are the first images coming. So the first images coming, like, where was the director appointed or curator, they have the same posture. and it's just like the immediate images that are coming. So it didn't even take me a long time to make research. This position somehow a lot of curators and directors choose when their position is announced. I did it as a work in exhibition, but also, like the first early work with the car piece, police car and taxi car, it was traveling also on the internet anonymously back then, without even people knowing that it's a work of art. So I like that it's transformed, and this also traveled like now as a meme, and it was nice to see the similarity and differences what it could do as a meme or as a work of art in the museum. Maybe I skip this one. How many minutes so far? I can't even see the clock. Anybody can tell me, or shall I?
So you have plenty of time. I think it doesn't matter. We can also extend it more.
Okay, just for me, like how long it has been?
30 minutes.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, then I will talk about this one too. I'm not gonna skip that. I was planning to skip this one, but it's very important. It's a work, as I said, I have this gesture-based works and short-term research works and long-term and lifetime projects. And this is, and I don't give up one for another. So all those practices are important. And one second. Yeah, all those practices are very important, and this one is one of those long-term project. It was about student debt issue in the United States, and it's very different system than Europe. When you want to study art or any department, you need to get a huge amount of loans, and the biggest step in the United States has been this issue, because also every other debt you have, you can announce bankruptcy, but not with student loan debt. So basically what happens, the people go to universities, they graduate with owning the states or the private banks, around like $250,000, maybe more sometimes. And this number always every year increases. So the tuition fees are increases all the time. So this work was done in 2014. That's why this chart ends in 2013. It was showing that it was such a big number in total overall the country that people had to pay back. And during the Occupy Wall Street, there was a collective, and this collective was formed by artists, academics, and lawyers, and so on. They wanted to continue after the occupation, with long-term ideas. And one of the ideas they had is they formed a kind of agency called Rolling Jubilee. It was a campaign. Basically, in the US, the state model is a bank gives the loan, but they don't go after the people. They sell these loans cheap to private agencies to go follow bloodthirsty private agencies. They just go door to door and collect from people every month. So if you study there, you might have to pay like at least for like many years, 20 years, 30 years, $1,000 a month, and these guys come from this private agency and collect money, and they don't forgive anyone. So the collective strike debt that comes from the Occupy Wall Street, they started Rolling Jubilee, and Rolling Jubilee is basically using the state system. They went to the banks and they bought, they fundraised. Like here you can see they fundraised $700,000, and with $700,000 money, they could buy the loans back from the banks of people's, basically that they need to pay. Around like here you can see $31 million of debt they can buy with $700,000 if they pay in advance. So then they send people letters saying that they don't need to pay back. This is a very huge percentage of the total money that needs to be paid, but not all of it. So their idea was to start with that and show that the system can be kind of like they could find a crack in the system and kind of like do their intervention. And I was thinking what art can do in this situation. So I asked a couple of artists to contribute with coin-operated machines or sculptures, so-called. Like Martha Rosler designed this coin vortex machine for student app. So people could actually donate inside the sculptures. Here you can see Dan Petrowski's plastic bag project, or Natasha Sadorhagian's shredded money donation box, or this monolith, anti-theft monolith I did. So all of these works, they were collecting money during the exhibition, and all the money was going to strike that collective. But if in the future any of these works are sold, the money will still go to the same organization. So it's a double fundraising strategy. Sculpture itself fundraise during the exhibition, but also as a meta surplus in the art market could be sold, and the same money and sold over and over again, and the same money goes, all the money that's generated from the sculptures goes to the same organization. So over a few years, these sculptures traveled, different exhibitions, and every time they fundraise for this organization. Eventually, I was invited to the British Art Show to do a UK version, because after United States had this like private education system that was totally going out of control. In UK also the situation starts, and this is very Brexit times. Basically in UK in 1998, they first time introduced tuition fees, maybe around like £1,000 per semester or per year. And then this number got bigger and bigger and bigger. So what we did, I invited 3 other artists. Susan Hiller was still alive back then, Liam Gillick and Goshka Mojuga, to design 3 new sculptures, and we toured around UK, and they did the same thing. And we also fund a sister organization, Jubilee Debt Campaign in UK, and donated the money to them also. These are the sculptures. Okay, I'm just like going, continuing. I think I will just stop at some point. Might not be the end of this slideshow, because I'm also curious to have some time also for the questions. This is a work I did in Helsinki, and it was in collaboration with firefighters. So I don't always collaborate with other artists, but I do collaborate often with people who are coming from other, disciplines and backgrounds, territories. And this was quite interesting collaboration. And finally, basically firefighters, they worked collectively. They are used to working collectively. And when I found the right department, they were like, not even speaking English. It was in Finland. So I told them there is this dystopian novel, Fahrenheit 451, and in the novel, in the future, it's banned to read books, and we want to do the opposites. I want to print books with you guys using the fire truck and fill it with printing machines, folding machine, glue machine, and all this, and print books, go around the city and print books, and all of them actually banned books from the different countries. And they didn't know about the film or the novel, and during this collaboration they got into it more and more. Actually, there's a little video here. I'm not sure if this is going to work properly, but you can see them going around town. Yeah. I'm just going to skip, give you little impressions about the piece. There's a whole other story about how this commission came. You know, in the beginning, I was talking about, you know, the background of the stories. So in Helsinki, there is a museum called Kiasma Museum, Contemporary Art Museum. And here you can see they're also delivering books directly to the windows as well. So Helsinki has Kiasma Museum as Contemporary Art Museum, but Guggenheim wanted to open a Guggenheim Museum in Helsinki, you know, like this global project, and one of the place should be Helsinki. But to do that, they go to the city, they ask the government for bringing the brand to the city. I think just to give the brand to Helsinki, they ask a few million euros. And that's not including anything, just it's not including making the museum happen and maintaining and sustaining and building and running the museum. It's just the right for the brand. So a lot of local artists and culture workers, they were against the situation, spending all the money only for branding, and instead they could just get together and commission their own pieces. So this was the first piece. They started an organization called Checkpoint Helsinki. It was really like an assembly of different generations of artists and creators and critics getting together and forming their own organization. They actually convinced the government to give them a budget to start commissioning pieces. So I don't know if this Guggenheim project went back on the table and to the discussion, but still not there as far as I know. But Checkpoint Helsinki continues commissions, and this was like kind of the first example that they could show that it's possible to do commissions by themselves and, you know, engage the public and so on. This was at Chisenhale Gallery in London when I invited all my collaborators that are not artists. So here you can see a stuntman, the lip reader guy's bag, and musicians. I work with mixologists and hairdresser from Berlin, Alex, and auctioneer, and all of them, they were there. So I created this kind of like TV show that I was not allowed to speak myself, and they could tell any story about the collaborations, different than the way I explain, like in an artist talk or in my website or wherever I talk about these projects. You know, we always like kind of make our own version of kind of like the mythology of the work, and they were allowed to tell the story in their own perspective, you know, their own way. So this was a gathering. It was kind of like a performative retrospective, looking back 10 years of practice like that in 2015. I'm gonna skip the video version. Yeah, I think I'm slowly finishing, by the way. This was a recent exhibition in Istanbul after, you know, COVID. I really miss making exhibitions that are also doing an exhibition like that would be probably impossible in Europe because of the regulations. As every year regulations get tougher and tougher. So it's very hard to actually take any kind of risk in an exhibition space. We can talk about this. But there's still some room in a place like Istanbul, and this was a commercial gallery, but I told them I want to do a museum show. Institutional structures are very different in places like that, so you can basically decide what you want to do, if you want to do. And we put this intercity bus in the gallery with the pavement that are all have water underneath, so if you walk in this room you get wet if you step on the wrong corner. And what's happening that at the entrance of the gallery, you cannot enter the gallery, but you can enter the bus. And from inside the bus, you can watch rest of the gallery, what's happening. And in the bus, there are basically seats. You go like backwards, traveling while watching the exhibition. And then you have to get out. You cannot see the rest of the show. You have to get out and go walk all the way back. So what I created, two different kind of audience. Basically, the one goes from the back door and the front, which is the bus entry. And they were performing for each other. So if you're in the room, walking on this like wet ground, the ones in the bus watching you, and you're also watching the ones in the bus if you are the one in the gallery. And there was also this gravity room to be able to enter that room. It was not even easy. Most people had vertigo, so they couldn't go on top of this room to go to the main room. So I really made it difficult for people to walk around, like physically difficult. And this worked quite well because people did miss a lot physical exhibitions and like an exhibition experience. So I decided to put all my like small works, collages, drawings in this difficult room, which is very hard to watch or read anything. And I sacrificed the works that made them secondary in order to have the exhibition design, exhibition experience as priority. So once you enter this gallery, it doesn't look like somewhere you have been before. If you have been before, it looks completely different. And it just creates this momentum. And when there's more people at the opening, it was more alive. So it was really like the city itself. So it basically brought whole city inside the gallery. The feeling how to live in such city, you know, that it's not only like horizontal, but also vertical. Okay, I will just end here, and we can just continue with the, is it frozen now?
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
No, it works. Yeah.
Yeah, just some more images. Unfortunately, I don't know what's coming. Normally, I do this with the questions, but if there is, it's frozen again.
It doesn't move.
Yeah.
No, it does. Okay. Yeah.
It's really, yeah. It tells us, enough slides. We can move to the questions.
Yeah, then let's say move to the question. Thank you so much. A little applause. And it makes sense. I would suggest to make a 10-minute break because the people from Zoom are always coming late because they sometimes start watching the video later. So let's meet at 9 again.
All right.
And have a little break now.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.